Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. Here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard, you probably didn't think you're going to hear from me today, but I got it all worked out, brought the gear with me, got an opportunity to sit down and record a show for you today. I don't know how long we go. Maybe we go the full 90. We'll just kind of see how things go. But good to be with you, and good to be able to celebrate Maroon Friday as we choose in the wonderful country in which we live. Which reminds me too, I get these reports all the time about the hot sheet, right, where everybody is listening to the show and that sort of stuff. Guys, we get an incredible amount of saturation from other countries, and I say that as I turn you guys up a little bit because it's amazing to me that people all over the world listen to the show. And I know they're Mississippi State fans. And I got a message a while back I wanted to share with you that, it kind of makes all this seem so much more worthwhile to me. I had a young man that messaged me from South Mississippi and said that, he's stationed overseas in the military. And he said that he loves the show, and one of the things he loves most about the show is he gets together with a couple of his buddies that are fans of other SEC schools, and they listen to podcasts, especially as it gets closer to college football season. And they just kind of have a guys' night, right? They sit around, have a beer or two, whatever they do, right? And they talk about college football, and they listen to podcasts from LSU and listen to this podcast, and it's become kind of their nightly ritual. And the bottom line is, it said, "Hey, Steve, thanks for giving me a little bit of home, a little bit of Mississippi." And so I don't say it enough, but for those of you that are in the military, that are doing a job that I would never want to do, and just be quite honest with you, I had the opportunity to do it like all other young men, elected to pass on it. And a lot of people doing a job out there, a very dangerous job, a job that requires them to be away from their families an awful lot and be in harm's way. And we appreciate you. We appreciate those who love you. They're kind of holding it down for you while you're gone. But have a tremendous amount of respect for our military families. And so much of it is because of the fact that there's such a demand around the world, for the world police and things like that. And there's so many people that end up in places they never thought they'd be, doing a job they never thought they'd have. And so I'm grateful for just a few short minutes over the course of your week that I can do something to remind you that what you're fighting for is worthwhile. So thanks so much to all of our military men and women and their families around the world. Now let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show, and I'm a longtime patron of their services. Bulldog Burger Company, what an amazing place to have a night out with friends, a night out with family, perhaps a business luncheon, whatever you want to do. They can accommodate you. It's one of the best places to go because the service, superior. The quality of food, superior. The experience itself, absolutely elite. 3 great locations to serve you: University Drive here in Start Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Rich and Flowwood area. You got to go get those spring rolls, man. It's part of our self-care routine, right? Works as well as anything, and it's proven. It's in writing. The spring rolls make you better looking. Get that chocolate shake to go. Again, I'm kind of partial to the Nutella shake. Maybe I'm behind the curve, but I like it. I like what I like. You do too. And you're going to love Bulldog Burger Company. The place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, guys. 2 weeks. Can we make it? We're almost there, kids. Can we get it done? Reminder to all of you procrastinating husbands out there. Get your honeydew stuff done. It's the summer's come along. You're like, I've had this going on. No, get it done. Number one, you want to be in good favor with the wife, right? Or the significant other. Whatever you call them these days. But the person that you love and that you share life with, you want to be in good graces. You don't want to lay around watching football on Saturday, kind of getting that evil eye, and also, too, kind of feeling guilty yourself, thinking, you know what, I should have already done that. Get it done. You get 2 weeks. This is your 2-week warning to get those things done, because we're going to enjoy college football season, kids. We're going to enjoy it. We're not going to apologize for it. We haven't had a lot to cheer for in a long time this year, right? Let's just kind of say it for what it is. You know, being a Mississippi State fan this past academic year was kind of up and down. It was. It didn't end the way we wanted it to. You know, softball nor baseball kind of had the seasons we were hoping for. There's always next year, right? Used to be the Mississippi State sports slogan of choice. There's always next year. But, you know, we had a really good football year. Both basketball teams made the tournament, but it's been a while, right? I mean, you know, it's like if you're like me and you love Mississippi State, like you constantly feel the need to be in defense, right, of the Bulldogs. It's nice when they give us some ammunition to work with, and I think we're going to have plenty this year. And those of you that heard, I was on the Mac and Cube show with Greg McElroy and Cole Kubelik earlier this week. Appreciate those guys having me on. And a chance for me to just kind of break some things down. And people say, well, Steve, I hope you set them straight. I just tell the truth. I don't go into these shows looking to be argumentative, but I don't let people paint a false narrative without a response from me. They did attempt to do that. And I enjoyed being on the show. I've been on Cole's show a few times. It's always nice to have the opportunity to spread the Bulldog message, perhaps to some radio stations around the South that don't always get the real story. And speaking of the real story, you can go to genespage.com right now and read Zach Arnett's comments from yesterday. I want to go over some of that before we get into the top 10 list. And, of course, we've got our final SEC preview of the preseason this week. And we'll knock that down today. It's Vanderbilt today. I know you're excited about that. I know that our Ole Miss listeners will listen with bated breath. But yeah, Zach, see, here's the thing that I love about the Arnett press conference, okay? Zach is not the most polished speaker when it comes to maybe tact, right? He is very articulate. He's a guy that communicates his point very well, but he also has just enough of an edge that I admire. You know, it's like, sometimes somebody will ask a silly question. And he's not a jerk to him, but at the same time, too, he doesn't just gloss over it and kind of entertain the question. I don't want to shame anybody. A lot of these people are much younger and less experienced than I am. Not that I don't make a mistake every once in a while, too. Like the other day, Tony Hughes steps up, and I forgot he was coaching running backs. Had a brain fart. It happens to the best of us. It's like, somebody says, hey, what's it like to have Will Rogers back with 3 years of experience under his belt? Well, what do you expect him to say? Oh, it sucks? It's a very obvious question. I know a lot of times people just want to get, a coach kind of talking about a player to get a quote for a feature or whatever. But it's like, what do you think? I mean, like, we only get a handful of these opportunities. Let's not waste the coach's time and our time with the more obvious questions. I mean, you guys, listen, the whole point of this is we as members of the media are there as your advocates to ask the questions that are important to you and to allow you to get more insight about your favorite team. It's not just, hey, I'm just coming up here to hang out with a coach. Look at me, let me get a selfie. That's not the point. And I take that advocacy, if I can spit it out here, I'm just going to move on from it. Because I'm going to mess it up again. I'm going to become a joke. But I enjoy being your advocate. How about that? Advocacy. There we go. I'm there as your representative. And that's the way that I look at it. And I consider all of our subscribers and all of our listeners and all of our followers on social media, I am very grateful that they depend on us to be their eyes and ears. And so when I show up and I ask questions, I just think, hey, I peruse the board, kind of keep up with the conversation of what's happening over there. What are our people asking about? What am I asking about, right? What am I curious about? Because I figure if I'm curious about it and I'm around it all the time, then you will be too. And so we try to get you an answer. And I think Zach does a great job of answering questions in a way that doesn't come off as coach speak. And that's very refreshing. Again, not to be critical of other coaches, but we've had some coaches in the past that their answers were basically non-answers. I appreciate and respect the fact that Zach Arnett will answer every question. And sometimes you get a bit of a terse response because you ask a stupid question. It's not like Leach. You weren't going to go viral. Leach is a guy that would absolutely take you there. If you ask a silly question, he'll tell you it's a silly question. Zach just kind of has this smirk at times. But I appreciate the fact that Arnett is real, right? There's so many of these polished heads, talking heads out here, and they're pretty boys in polo shirts with their manicured hair and things like that. I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's tough. We talk about people being easily offended. I can't stand people that want to insult our intelligence, And I never get that with Zach. Zach's a very intelligent guy, but I think it's interesting that Zach has conversations with us like it's not even a press conference. So what I mean by that is like he doesn't walk in there with these prepared talking points, and no matter what you ask, he's just going to talk over and say what he wants to say. He could do that in his opening statement if he chose to. But reality of it is it's very conversational with him. And we've had some questions, about starters, and I want to spend some time talking about this. We had somebody the other day said, hey, has Will Rogers been officially named the starter? Well, he hadn't until yesterday. But it's kind of like, hey, is the sun going to come up tomorrow? Well, yeah. I mean, Will's the guy. And there are a lot of people that already know this, and they put this stuff out there basically as marketing, right? The unveiling, of the starter. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for us to do that. We have the most experienced, most prolific starter in the Southeastern Conference, so no, there's no point in that. But when asked yesterday about, the starting lineup, right? He says, we've still got a ways there. I mean, some of the returning positions, I can tell you, Bookie Watson's going to be a starter. Yeah. I can tell you that pretty good. I can tell you Jaden Crumedy. I can tell you Will Rogers, Woody Marks, right? Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it, right? That's the thing about us having an experienced roster and guys that understand their jobs, understand what's required of them, is one of the reasons that people like myself are a little bit bully on the season. We're expecting a good year because of this level of experience. Old wins, experienced wins. Now, there are some exceptions, obviously. I mean, when Leonard Fournette showed up at LSU, he wasn't old, he wasn't experienced, but he was super talented. But by and large, you want to be the mature, experienced roster. Johnny Manziel wasn't especially experienced either, when he showed up at College Station. But my point being is that those are kind of players that transcend, class or experience, or just they're specialized athletes. Like Dakota Jordan. There's a reason Dakota Jordan started this year at Mississippi State much of the year. He was one of the more talented players. So I don't believe that you have to be loyal to a fault to experienced players. But when your best players are also your most experienced players, you're in a really good position. And that's the position Mississippi State finds itself in. To continue, some of those battles you've got to know. But the other ones, they'll play out all through the mock week. Yeah, so the mock week is this next week. It begins, matter of fact, today is this weekend is the last, today I guess is the last media viewing opportunity of practice for a while. We'll be done with camp. And of course, I'm in Knoxville. So, Dave Murray, Paul, those guys will hold it down for us today. And then we're going to get into mock week. And that was something that Leach implemented when he was here. And it's basically a dress rehearsal. They're going to go through game week this week. Everything they do, it's a dry run for everybody, the support staff, everybody. Because once we get into game week, we don't want to be figuring things out. And it's like, oh, well, who's taking care of this? You get all that knocked out this coming week. And then next week, we're into preparations for Southeastern Louisiana. And so the rest of that story about the mock week is basically what happens now is we're going to take everybody that we expect to be on the scout team. They're going to begin preparing to run a good scout next week. They'll probably do some of that this week. But you'll see a division of the roster in many respects. The guys that we expect to play will continue to get the reps and a bigger share of them because of the fact we're getting ready to play a game. But we'll still do our little, our Sunday night football or Friday night football, or however Zach wants to do it this year, where the young guys get out there and play, and to get film and tape on them and see how they're retaining, what's been shared with them as far as schematic responsibilities and things like that. But we're about to ramp up, and we're not going to waste a rep on a guy that's not going to play against Southeastern. Now, there's always some ebb and flow with that. We get a guy that's injured, you get a guy that's a little bit banged up, we got to still facilitate practice. So you may have a guy get called up, from the practice squad, from the scout team to practice with the varsity. But there are a lot of guys that you've been hearing about in practice, showing flashes that are going to be depth pieces, so they're going to make that move over to the scout team. Nobody really wants to be on a scout team, but it's a necessary part of the college football experience. And those guys do an invaluable job to help prepare your team for that week. I remember a couple times, under Mullen and a couple times under Leach, where he referenced what a good scout they got that week. A lot of it's because guys are trying to earn a job. And most guys show up not expecting to play as true freshmen. They want to play. They don't expect to play. And this is a chance for them to continue to kind of sharpen the saw a little bit and have an opportunity to show the coaches what they can do, and not to mention to get better. Reps make you better. The more reps you run, traditionally, the better you get, as long as you're running good reps and you're getting good instruction. But the other guys that are going to be with the varsity, they're expected to play. And again, there's some guys that are still in contention for a spot in the starting lineup. And you got to begin to ask yourself, okay, so where do we go from here, right? There are a couple of battles that we're kind of keeping our eyes on, and I think for the most part the offense is set. I think Rylan Goday and Spivey both are kind of 1A and 1B at tight end. Antonio Harmon is a guy we expect, especially in third downs, to be a guy that creates a bit of a mismatch against whatever defense they want to roll out there. I mean, that's a big physical guy, for sure. I believe he's found his niche there. And I will also say, too, because I really have no shame, I told you so. I told you so. Way back when, and there were people on Twitter that got upset with me for being honest about this. So, Steve, don't say he's going to be a tight end. He wants to play wide receiver. Well, I'd rather, number one, it's not my place, right, to tell that kid that. Number two, I'm going to call it as I see it, and I think this guy is a spread flex tight end all the way. I think he can play football a long time as a flex tight end. I don't think he's a guy that's going to have the foot speed to be an X receiver on the next level. I said that then, was criticized for it, so I'm going to come back now and tell you I told you so. And now I think Antonio Harmon is a guy now that's going to be a real weapon in this offense. Absolutely do. Love the kid. Love his work ethic, love his ability to catch football, and I think we're putting him in a position to be successful. And there's some other guys down the depth chart, but I think by and large, we go with a 3 tight set, which is kind of a rarity, but if we do, it'll be Goday, Spivey, Harmon, with rare exception. And again, I think Harmon's going to be a guy that I miss at Harvey. I mean Harmon. Harmon is going to be a guy that I think is going to really, I won't say that he's going to carry this team, but I think he's going to be a playmaker for us. I think he is a guy that will have some opportunities to do some things this year. And maybe he's a forgotten man on his team, but I'm expecting him to have a good year. In addition to that, again, I think completely offense is set. I think we know how the offensive line is going to run. I think we know what to expect at wide receiver. Of course, there's going to be some ebb and flow at times. At wide receiver, we're going to rotate a lot. Jordan Mosley is a guy that you guys don't know a ton about. You're going to see a lot more of him this year. Justin Robinson's a guy that known commodity. Tulu Griffin is a guy that people are already somewhat fearful of. Recently named preseason All-American. A lot of people know him as a return guy, so they kick away from him. And I think, again, he's been underutilized. And I think we all see that. But don't be surprised at the middle of the year if everybody in the SEC is like, this Tulu Griffin kid, Tulu Griffin. I'm telling you, he and Woody Marks, I think, really, really, really benefit from this change in philosophy and from Chad Bumpus getting a job as far in relation to Tulu because of the fact I think Chad's going to put him in his natural position. And if anybody knows how to play slot receiver at Mississippi State University, it's Chad Bumpus. I'm eager to see what Chad and Tulu kind of come up with this year in this new brand of offense. The defensive side of the football, our depth on the defensive line, I think, has proven to be better than maybe some people anticipated. And I think, again, getting Eric Taylor is a big part of that, too. Former LSU Tiger by way of Southwest Mississippi Community College. That was a big get for us. I don't know that we celebrated that enough. I mean, that's a very, very accomplished guy on the high school level, guy that had All-American designation. And he goes to LSU, doesn't pan out, and then we get him. And now he's here. He's the same guy. I mean, like, the trajectory of his career is still there. He just had to take a bit of a detour. And so I say that because I think some people right now, our fans, are thinking, I don't know what to think. Well, let me tell you, Eric Taylor is a dude. Absolutely is a dude. And will do a great job for us, provided he stays healthy. This is a guy with NFL potential. And then we've had flashes from Deontay Anderson. This is a guy, again, who was an All-American out of high school. Redshirted, played a little bit last year. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Sean Ferguson thing. Even though Sean played earlier in his career, David Turner is not scared to give a young guy a chance. And I think that's what you're seeing with Deontay Anderson. Devontae Russell is coming on. And I understand he's having the best camp of his Bulldog career right now. So those two will kind of work kind of hand in hand. But I think when you look at the defensive front, I think we know how it's going to line up on snap number one. And I think we now have some very able-bodied and capable defenders to provide some depth on the two deep. We'll see how things go. Eager to kind of see what happens at weak side linebacker. Eager to kind of see what shakes out there, how that depth chart kind of folds. Again, I think in the end, it's the three backers are going to be J.P. Purvis, Buki, and Jet. I think. But, we'll see what happens. Obviously you want Jet and Buki out there as much as they can be effective and maintain some level of stamina because they're your most prolific players defensively. I need those guys out there. And I think, obviously, everybody knows DeCamerion Richardson's going to start. The opposite side, that battle's going to boil down to Ferge and DeCarlos. Of the two, I think DeCarlos probably has the advantage physically. Ferge clearly has the advantage from an experience standpoint. And he's been kind of up and down at times. He always plays hard. But he's a guy, too, that kind of picked on at times, too. Again, DeCarlos, with that great length and catch radius, is still learning the nuances of the position, but he's probably the better athlete and the better fit for the McBath experience. But again, Ferge is just one of those guys that is just a solid player that continues to show up and do a good job. And it's amazing to me, Asias Ferge attended my combine in Clarksdale years ago, and he's still playing college football. Still here at Mississippi State. I remember when we committed him, I was like, you know what? Okay, I kind of get it. And every year, people are like, he's probably going to hit the portal. He never has. He and Austin Williams may have attended more practices than anybody in the history of the program when it's all said and done. But, yeah, Ferge is going to have a role. I think maybe Ferge starts snap one, but I won't be surprised if DeCarlos Nicholson gets more of the snaps. And I think in the end, I think Ferge is probably a two-deeper. I think Nicholson, just because of the fact that he has a little more athleticism, a little more size, just needs a little grooming, right? Just needs some experience out there, kind of taking on FBS receivers. I think you kind of ramp him up a little bit slowly. And I think in the end, won't be the least bit surprised if we go into SEC play with DeCarlos on one side and DeCam on the other. Not to say that Ferge's not going to play a lot. He is. And he's happy to play whatever role we need him to. But I think in the end, DeCarlos is going to win the job. I think when you look back at snaps played and tackles recorded at the end of the year, I think DeCarlos will be ahead of Furge. The safety thing, Jacoby Albert, again, that's a name we continue to hear. And, of course, State's having to replace 3 safeties. To me, the biggest loss is Jackie Matthews. And I may be in the minority there, but that's a guy that knew how to play, number one, on the back end, but did a great job coming up and playing a very physical brand of football against the run. This is a guy that brought the wood. I wish he'd have come back. I really do. I know everybody has NFL dreams, and so Jackie chose to pursue those and went undrafted, but would love to have had him back. But all that said, we have the athletes to put this thing together in the secondary. But that safety group, again, is just, what I worry the most about is not, hey, can we put 3 frontline safeties out there and feel good about that? Yes, absolutely. What happens when somebody gets a little bit banged up, though? I mean, you feel good about Banks and Bulldog safety. I don't know if there's going to be anybody in the country doing a better job covering slot receivers better than Marcus Banks. This kid's legit. Absolutely is. One of the fastest players on the team. I'd love to see him and Tulu in a foot race. Really, really fast, really, really quick, has good instincts. There's a reason Alabama signed him in the first place. Then you begin to factor in Keyshawn Preston, really more of a run stopper, can play the deep third a little bit, a bit inconsistent at times in coverage. Jacoby Albert's a guy, obviously, that was very highly recruited, went to Kentucky, and we get him closer to home. And I think that he's a guy, too, that has flashed enough that you guys should expect to see him. And the question then becomes, okay, what happens on the second team? That's really the issue. And we have talked about safeties since the end of spring practice. This is something we're going to have to watch. And so they'll settle that. I think they're close. And to hear Zach talk about it, and I think sometimes he talks to his team, to the media, is let's just kind of see how things go. And I think you got to keep people hungry. You got to have guys that continue to work. I mean, nobody is promised anything at this point. Nobody. A few more comments from Barnett. They ask him basically about the position battles themselves, if he's enjoyed watching those play out. He goes, I don't know. Everybody talks about the Sam linebacker position, right? But I've highlighted that some defensive ends have flashed some stuff where they maybe even have us considering whether playing with a full-time Sam is the right move, and that's talking about going to the 4-man fronts. We got a whole lot of combinations being played at safety and cornerback. There's more on the defensive side than the offensive side, speaking of battles, because there are less returning guys. So it's been good to see. I don't think we're playing a high quality of defense all the time, so you throw in a new combination and see if they can do any better. And that's kind of where we are. I think we all kind of see it the same way, right? You got to settle the sound linebacker position. You got to find a suitable replacement behind Jet. You got to find a good 2-deeper because Jet's going to go out there at weak side backer and do the best he can do. And the same thing with Buki. You've got to be able to find some quality depth behind them. Deshaun Page obviously is a guy that has played multiple spots within the defense at the linebacker room, and so I think he is a guy obviously that could factor in at either of those spots. And that's a guy that's played a lot of SEC football. So you feel good about kind of rounding into shape here, and you feel like there are some guys too, some younger guys at corner. Like we haven't talked a lot about Radar Jones or Kamari Rogers, and of course Radar did not go through spring practice. But those two guys are very, very talented and were highly recruited. They just need some reps. And Kamari, of course, missed most of last season, recovering from another ACL injury. But when you start working through this, the pieces are there. It's just a matter of us kind of, meshing things together and finding the right direction. But we're going to have to defend in a deep third, and I think that's one of the things that maybe helps you a little bit too, is you realize you've got this blitz-happy scheme, and maybe that kind of prevents people from really testing those safeties over the top as much as they ordinarily would. And so, that's a big aspect of it too. We talk about that all the time. The best way to cover up a leaky secondary is to have a great pass rush, and we expect to do that. But there are going to be times when they're able to protect, and we're going to have to defend. And it's not like we're pulling kids out of the student section to go play safety. These guys are going through practice every day. They're getting better, But again, my biggest concern all the way through is, Coach Dewhurst, his first time on the field as a full-time assistant coach at Mississippi State. Yes, he was in the room last year as a QC guy, and he knows exactly what Zach Arnett wants. But then you throw him in a position where he's having to replace 3 starters. You're asking an awful lot. I mean, you are. The good thing is we hit the portal hard and went and got some pieces that we think can play. Morant is a guy, obviously, that was on the team last year from Michigan. He's a guy, obviously, that could factor in at times. Chris Key's a guy that factors in at times. And so it's not like we just said, hey, Coach, here's the keys to the car. Have her home by 10. We went out and tried to get some pieces out there. But, again, that's the group we have talked about the entire year as needing some real TLC. And we'll see how things go. But I think when you look back middle of the year, if this defense is playing up to potential, I think a lot of it's going to be because of the job that Coach Dewhart and his group did. Because if these safeties can protect, and these safeties can help plug in the run, I don't think you're just going to have a great defense. I think you have the potential to have an elite defense when you think about especially the guys in the first 2 levels of defense. But we've got to be able to get after the quarterback. We can't sit out there and, let people survey the field forever and a day. We've got to be able to get out there and play. That's the one concern I have is safety. But again, the first team group I think will be solid, and then we'll go from there. All right, time for today's top 10 list. As always, brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. Blair Chandler is a mortgage professional. Many people are looking to buy a home for the very first time. A lot of people are thinking, you know what, Steve, I don't even know how to go about this. What do I do? What do I need? Do I even qualify? That's the best thing about Blair. He can get you pre-qualified for exactly what you're looking for. So you're not wasting your time, your real estate agent's time looking for homes that perhaps you can't afford. And maybe it's a starter home for you, but it's a chance for you to plant some roots somewhere. And maybe in the future, you say, you know what, we're going to expand, but we want to get our life started. Blair can help you get your life started, whether it's a condo, whether it's a mobile home, whether it's a traditional ranch-style house. Blair can help you with that, whether it be new construction or buying an existing home. Blair Chandler is your one-stop shop. Visit him at closewithblair.com or give him a call or text today at 601-500-2344, as I just accidentally tried to FaceTime Blair. So Blair, they'll explain that on your phone. But nevertheless, closewithblair.com. Again, 601-500-2344. And you can deal directly with Blair. You don't have to go through a call center or anything like that. Be sure and let him know you heard about him on the Boneyard. Longtime friend of mine. I would not send you to someone that would not take care of you and your needs. And again, that's Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. All right, so we talked so much about 1998 this week as the new interlocking MSU is, I guess the old interlocking MSU is now new again. I'm excited. I bought some merch. Going to buy some more when I get back. But 1998 was an interesting year in music. You've heard me say before, like the late 90s, early 2000s are kind of a weird time in music. I think our list reflects that because you've kind of got some bands that are, from the 80s and before, they're kind of hanging on and still producing. I mean, the Rolling Stones had big hits that year. And you've got some new bands that have kind of emerged. And some bands that didn't make my list. Everclear did not make my list. Green Day didn't make my list. The New Radicals didn't make my list. It was a weird time in music. It was. And I think a lot of it's because of the fact that things had kind of gotten watered down a little bit. But so here's tip of the cap to Eve 6. I didn't include them, but Eve 6 had some hits. My favorite one from them is Promise, but Eve 6 is Inside Out was kind of making the rounds back in 98. But number 10 on our list. The band that really started it for me was Kiss. Kiss reunited with the original lineup in the late 90s. It's with Ace and Peter. And, of course, nowadays you've got Eric and Tom kind of pretending to be Peter and Ace. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm just happy they're still playing music. And, really the band of my youth in many respects. All these years later, still played. But they released an album, Psycho Circus, the title track from that album. Great track. I love it and wanted to include them. And I say welcome to the show, Psycho Circus, number 10. Number 9, there was so much hype around this band even before they made their debut album. And that's because Jacob Dylan, the son of Bob Dylan, fronted the band, the Wallflowers. And many of you know them, of course, from One Headlight, which was one of the most overplayed songs of the 90s. But the great song, Heroes, great track from them. That's my number 9 track. Number 8, I was more of a White Zombie fan than a Rob Zombie fan. And there are people even to this day that say I look like Rob Zombie. I don't believe that. But I guess in some respects, maybe there are some elements. But I like the White Zombie stuff better. I do. But we would be remiss if we didn't throw a bone in Rob Zombie's direction for the great track, Dragula. Dragula, number 8 on your list. Number 7, and I'll probably get some hate mail for this, and that's okay. I came down on in the great battle between Green Day and Offspring. I went with Offspring. I thought Offspring was the more entertaining band. They didn't take themselves too seriously. They liked to poke fun at themselves. Green Day made themselves a bit of a joke at times too, but thought they were serious. You know my feelings about Green Day. So Offspring makes our list with one of the silliest songs of my generation, but it's pretty fly for a white guy. It's great, though. It's entertaining. There's value in entertainment. All right, number 6, and probably the reason that I have dreads today is our number 6 artist, who I think in many respects is the coolest guy on the planet. I've never seen him play live, but man, I tell you this guy in the 90s had hit after hit after hit after hit. And I don't know that he gets enough respect. It's Lenny Kravitz with the great track Fly Away. I believe that's off 5. I think that's off album 5. Love Lenny Kravitz, and I tell you, my first introduction to Lenny Kravitz was on the Mississippi State campus. I had come up when I was in high school for an event, a computer science competition, and had a chance to hang out with my buddy Keith Jones and his roommates. They were really into Lenny Kravitz. Of course, Let Love Rule was big at the time. And I've been a fan ever since. It was different than everything else I listened to and liked at the time, but Lenny Kravitz was a bit of a throwback, and there's some authenticity in the Lenny Kravitz experience. Number 5, the best thing to ever come from Nirvana was Dave Grohl, who eventually founded the Foo Fighters. And it seems like this song was everywhere. But it's Hero, or My Hero. There goes My Hero from the Foo Fighters, your number 5 track. I love the Foo Fighters. I love them more than a friend. And in the beginning, I was on the fence about them. And I was like, you know what? This guy's really got something. This Dave Grohl guy is not just, kind of profiting on the fact that he was part of Nirvana, which is a band that people liked an awful lot. Dave Grohl's a genius. All right, number 4, a band that I really love. And, of course, they... At times, Brett Scallions has left the band on hiatus. I saw them at Rocklahoma a few years back, thanks to my buddy Mark. Thanks, Mark. But it's the band Fuel. They tried to hire Chris Daughtry one time. Were you aware of that? When he was at American Idol, I made the pitch to try to get Chris to be the lead singer to replace Brett. Brett did reunite. Daughtry did his own thing. And, of course, we recognized Chris Daughtry here recently. But it's the great song, Shimmer. Love it. I love everything on those first two albums from Fuel. Incredible. And She Had a Bad Day. It's Bittersweet. Bittersweet, maybe my favorite Fuel song. But we're going with Shimmer today, number 4. Number 3, this gentleman has probably provided as much of my road soundtrack of anybody, ever. And it's Kenny Wayne Shepherd. We're going back to the very beginning. In many respects. I guess Ledbetter Heights would be the beginning, but we're going to go with off the Trouble Is album, We're Going with Blue on Black. And it seemed like everybody loved that song from all walks of life. It's kind of blues in its rarest form in many respects. And I think Noah is a tremendous vocalist that doesn't always get his due. The best Kenny Wayne Shepherd tracks for me have Noah singing over the top of them. All right, number 2, a song that means an awful lot to me and to our family. I've shared with you guys before, MTV used to play music, thus MTV Music Television. I know that nowadays it's basically ridiculousness, the Jersey Shore, and then hair care commercials all day long. And apparently that works for them. They're just, they have absolutely gravitated away from music, yet they continue to do like the Video Music Awards, yet they don't play any videos. I don't get it. We used to spend our whole day watching the videos on MTV. I mean, the engagement was through the roof. We couldn't wait. And then they started Dial MTV, where you could call in and request your favorite video, and then they would play the most requested videos. And we loved it. We did. And then somebody somewhere decided, hey, we don't need to do music anymore. I know we're music television, but we don't need to do music anymore. And so they moved away. But in the 90s, they still play. Hey, Bulldog fans, are you on the go? Is it more difficult than ever to find something healthy and wholesome to eat? I tell you what, let us help you with our friends at HelloFresh. Had great experiences with them in the past. You can take a bite out of summer yourself with HelloFresh. From chef-crested seasonal recipes to their new fresh and fit summer menu, HelloFresh brings flavor right to your door. And here's the thing, too. It doesn't have to just be the same old thing, right? Sometimes you get caught in the habits. They have these new menus, and they have new options for you that make dining a pleasure. Make your home the hangout place this summer with crowd-pleasing eats, from a backyard bratwurst to tangy key lime pie. HelloFresh Market makes summer entertaining a cinch. Be sure and check them out. We're going to make it easy for you. Go to HelloFresh.com/Boneyard50. Again, that's HelloFresh.com/Boneyard50. And you wonder what the 50 stands for? Yeah, it gets you 50% off plus free shipping. How about that? 50% off plus free shipping. Again, that's HelloFresh.com/Boneyard50. We've all been there before. You got big weekend plans. For some reason, it just didn't work out. Maybe life gets in the way. Maybe you want to head down to the casino. Maybe take some of their money. I like to do that. Well, MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game for you. Dive into truly realistic casino experiences featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. Take advantage of weekly blackjack tournaments and a brand new collection of high-end games for a chance at real cash rewards. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action's in your hands. And the best part is you don't even have to wear pants. How cool is that? Your adventure at the MyBookie Casino begins today with a generous sign-up bonus using promo code Boneyard. That's promo code Boneyard to secure yourself a sweet deposit bonus. And that's not all. Because their revamped loyalty program ensures that you'll be showered with rewards, including free spins, cashback offers, and a host of exclusive VIP perks. The more you play, the more you'll win. Play anytime, anywhere with the MyBookie Casino. Again, that's promo code Boneyard. Videos, and it was always VH1 too. But all that said, when Ani was born, my oldest son, the video that was on at the moment that he was born was Lightning Crashes from Live. It was. Now, of course, that was in the mid-90s. When Audrey was born, of my children, of my girls, she is probably probably the most unique in many respects, to be quite honest with you. She's very much an independent, confident young lady. I'm very, very proud of her. And she and I are very close and love her to death. But when she was born, the song Iris from the Goo Goo Dolls was playing on MTV. And if we hadn't already settled on Audrey, we may have named her Iris. But I love the song, and many of you know the story. Of course, that's from the City of Angels soundtrack. And Johnny and those guys got a chance to screen the movie and then write the song, and it fits perfectly. It's an incredibly beautiful song. And if you don't, I'm not going to give any spoilers if you've never seen the movie, but basically Nicolas Cage is an angel and falls in love with Meg Ryan, who is immortal. And so he tries to find a way to be with her. And he bargains with God that he will give up forever to touch her. And that's the line in the song too. I'd give up forever to touch you. That's what it's about. It's like I will give up being an angel just to be with you. And so the premise of the movie is rather interesting. Of course, very far-fetched, but interesting nonetheless. And so Iris was a huge part of that. If you watch the video, there's a lot of footage from the movie. Number one, though, because we don't like to end on ballads whenever we can. Metallica made a huge comeback in the 90s. Huge. Absolutely huge. And really kind of introduced themselves to a new generation. It's a lot of people are like, oh, Metallica's just not the same anymore. Nobody's the same anymore. Nobody. As a matter of fact, if your favorite artist is just popping out cookie cutter tracks all the time, they're not going to be around very long either. But the Metallica track Fuel, man, it's just one of those ones to me. I think it's the best rock song of '98. So it's number one on our list today. And it's true rock. It is. And there are a lot of Metallica haters out there. And I owe my love of Metallica, in many respects, to my friend Jason Dawsey. Jason was very much against the hair metal movement. He just didn't like all the image associated with it. And so he listened to a lot of stuff that was a lot darker. And Jason's an interesting guy. Don't get me wrong. Even to this day, very interesting guy. Not at all what you'd expect from a short-haired guy that grew up in South Mississippi. But he was into Megadeth, and he was into Hallows Eve. He was into all these bands that really never got played on MTV. He really kind of liked the whole grassroots, West Coast movement, kind of what was happening out there in Oakland and San Francisco, more so than what was happening in L.A. And I remember sitting in his bedroom and watching Cliff Amal and hearing him talk about Metallica and that they were going to be huge. And I remember seeing those videos thinking, you know what, this thrash thing is probably not going to last. And it changed music. That's the thing, too. I go back to so many people who are like, well, Steve, the 15 minutes of grunge, it changed everything. Well, it really didn't. It really didn't. And a lot of those bands are no longer around. And if they are, they're playing clubs again. And then you got bands like Metallica and Megadeth that are selling out festivals all over the world. And so I was wrong about thrash. I thought it was going to be a flash in the pan. And I thought grunge would have more staying power. And I was wrong. I was. And it's part of those things about giving the people what they want. And that's the thing about Metallica is their core fan base is as hardcore as any. Period. And it's not just, hey, well, I downloaded all their music and I bought a t-shirt off Amazon that they didn't profit from. Their fans, I think about Peyton Plumlee's dad. Peyton Plumlee's dad has seen Metallica play multiple countries around the world. And he went to Scotland or something to see him play in a castle. Those people are hardcore. There's an experience there. There is a brotherhood and a sisterhood with the Metallica fan base that you don't find a lot of other places. Maybe you could say Iron Maiden, but there is just one of these things when people show up, they want to sing their favorite songs, they want to be part of the show, and they have such reverence for these musicians. And, Metallica is just one of these bands, man. I guess they were founded in 83. And you look up now, and yes, they've had some craziness at times, but they've survived and still doing it at a big level. Of course, a new album dropped earlier this year, and mixed reviews about that. But, I remember the first Metallica album that I actually owned had some cassettes that were kind of pirated. We used to have the dual play cassettes where you could dub one thing to another. But as far as going into a place of business and buying a Metallica album, and you're going to say, but Steve, late to the party, it's true, is about once a month. That was when Dana and I were first starting out. And about the only way I ever treated myself was, sometimes I wouldn't get the Food Club coffee creamer we'd step up and get the real thing. But once a month, I'd buy a CD. Once a month. And then one day, it was time for me to buy my CD. Of course, it was right after payday. Checks had already cleared. And I wanted to go buy a CD. I don't even remember what I wanted to buy. And I'm sure it wasn't anything, significant. But Dana says, well, let me pick out the CD this time. And I was against it. I was. And she said, I'm going to get the Metallica Black Album. And I was like, no, I don't really want to do this. She goes, no, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. And I got it. And, of course, I knew the hits and knew a few songs from here and there. But I had it. And once I got over, her pulling rank on me, I enjoyed that tremendously. And then I went back and bought, And Justice for All. And then I went back and bought Master of Puppets, which is my favorite Metallica album to this day. Then Ride the Lightning. I went back and bought all the back catalog. And, I love when Death Magnetic came out. I mean, me and Ani were both really excited about it because I was like, this is an album for him, for his generation. But I dig Metallica, and again, I credit Jason Dawsey so much for that. But the reality of it is that when you listen to much of the music today, the modern rock of today, there's a lot more Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer in them than there is Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and even Soundgarden. It's just completely different. And everybody's playing harder, and in some respects playing faster. The vocal presentation is much more aggressive than it was, with grunge, and certainly with, this coffee house crap they tried to push off as rock music in the late 90s, early 2000s in many respects. But just want to pay homage to those guys. Again, huge supporter of Metallica and their fan base for sure. Even though I was a late convert. And so hope you enjoy the list. If you have ideas for a top 10 list, reach out and let us know. We get something pretty much every day of the show or day after. And a lot of it's stuff we've already done. And, Robbie is Roy is my sounding board a lot of times on this. And I'll say, hey, what do you think? And we've got some other things that we're working on as we'll get closer to it's football season, but the fact that we can still talk about great stuff, and again, this music's 25 years old, and there are a lot of songs that were on that list, like the real quickly. I'm going to give you like some songs that were on the top 100 rock list that didn't make my list. I just bumped the microphone. Please forgive me. But here's this is like from the playback charts from '98. So number 4, and this is what we considered rock back then, not me. This is what modern mainstream rock considered rock and roll. Number 4, you want to take a stab at this? It was the Bare Naked Ladies, One Week. That was the number 4 most played rock song. It's not rock. It's a pop song. Nothing against those guys. I thank them for their contributions to Big Bang Theory. But Bare Naked Ladies, it's not rock. Number 3, One Hit Wonder, and everybody loved it and everybody sang along to it. But it's Fastball's The Way. That was the number 3 most played rock song in '98. Number 2, also not rock, but it's Every Morning from Sugar Ray. It's a pop song. It is. And again, I liked it just like you guys did too. I thought Mark McGrath was interesting. But the number 1 most played rock song at the time was What It's Like by Everlast. Also, not a rock song, but it was labeled rock. For a while, rock kind of became a catch-all, category. But, one of my favorite songs that actually came out prior to '98 that was released, and we'll throw a ball in their direction, was One from Creed. And I know it's so funny, too. It's like there are some bands out there. It's like if certain members of the band prove to be douchebags, it's like all of a sudden we just paint everybody in the same light. I'll tell you, Mark Tremonti is the best guitarist of this generation. I'll die on that hill. And I think when you go back and listen to My Own Prison and you listen to One, even back then, you can see he was different. He was cut from a different cloth. And so while that I don't technically consider that a 98 song, we'll praise Mark Tremonti. And had a chance to meet Mark over in Birmingham. It was tremendous. Be able to shake his hand. The dude is the real deal. And to be able to watch him perform with his side project, Tremonti, love that debut album above all, to be quite honest with you. But Mark Tremonti is a guy that, he's the guitar player in many respects. He does some things that are pretty ridiculous, for sure. But again, reach out and let us know if you have ideas for the top 10 list. You can find me on Twitter at ScoutSteveR. And Roy, of course, at Dogmatic67, DAWGMATIC 67. It's okay to push the follow button for Roy, right? He's not going to be like posting pictures of his food and cats and things like that. I mean, or his cats eating food, and Roy walking around like in a house coat or something in slippers. He's not going to do that, okay? But you can follow him. He'll share some Mississippi State stuff, of course. And certainly share our great list. And you can find those on Spotify under that same handle, Dogmatic67. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart. I was in there this week. The selection is great as ever. If you're looking for your interlocking MSU merch, you can find it at Campus Bookmart. That's always the case, right? They're always on the cutting edge of this stuff. Miss Kathy Brown does a tremendous job. Buying merch for a wonderful fan base who wants to outfit their family in the latest in maroon and white merch. You can do that in person at Campus Bookmart, or you can visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net, courtesy of Al Gore's Internet, and order until your heart's content. I know many people have been waiting for payday and said, Steve, I gotta get my gear. Well, Campus Bookmart's going to save you some money and have a tremendous selection for you. And speaking of saving you some money, by being a loyal Boneyard listener, you have a phrase that pays. It's BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than 75 bones, absolutely incomplete. Mom, we're running out of time. I'm just telling you now, we're running out of time. You need to get to work on this. It shouldn't all be your responsibility, but unfortunately some things in life fall at your feet, and this is one of them. Everybody wants new merchandise when they make that trip to Davis Wade Stadium. And rather than having to deal with it on game day, why don't you go ahead and surprise them now? And that way it'll save you some time and effort and having to fight those crowds on game day. You can just go ahead and begin your game day festivities and everybody decked out in new Mississippi State merch. Again, it's campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. And you know what it stands for. Beautiful Steve Robertson. All right, let's take a quick look at Vanderbilt. We won't play them this year unless we both get to Atlanta, which some people projected, which is completely crazy. And again, it just speaks again to the ridiculous nature of these preseason polls. And it's like the thing, too. I mean, you got like 200 Alabama bloggers out there, and they all request credentials and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I was once a guy that's trying to make it, too, so I don't want to be too hard on all that stuff. But I think we're better off maybe picking like 60 people that are longtime members of this credentialed media group and let all of us vote. That's my opinion. And he said, but Steve, how do we make it fair? Well, here's one thing that's not fair right now is the fact that, like at the University of Alabama, and again, that's not in any way to be critical of Alabama, you just have more coverage. You got more websites. You got more, radio personalities. You got a lot of people over there that cover the Tide. Same thing in Louisiana at LSU. And so, but rather than just give everybody a vote, that anybody that registers, let's just say, okay, listen, we're going to have, these 5 individuals or 6 individuals, whatever, that cover these teams on a daily basis that are actually credentialed. Those people are going to vote. And whether 14? And so you begin to do the math on that. Okay, so you put that number together, and maybe you grandfather a few people in, maybe some old coaches or whatever, and you have the true SEC voting instead of this, because it's all done anonymously. And it's like if you pick all these guys and let everybody vote, and it's an equal number for each team within the league. I mean, there's probably not 5 people that vote for Vanderbilt, right? But there's enough people in the Tennessee media, and I'm sure the national media, we could figure that out. Instead of having people that just show up, some guy runs, rolltideroll.net or whatever, and then he's in there voting Vanderbilt to win the SEC because the whole thing has become a fraud. The SEC's got to take control of this thing. I mean, you say, Steve, it's just a list. It is just a list. But if you're going to release this on behalf of the SEC media, there needs to be some type of credibility with all this. And the list, in many respects, has lost its luster. All right, looking at Vanderbilt last year, I picked Hawaii to beat Vanderbilt, and boy, was I wrong there. Mike Wright and those guys destroyed Hawaii 63-10. And I remember people telling me then, Steve, Hawaii may be the worst team in Division I football. Well, they looked like it that day. The next week, Elon, tougher than expected, but Vandy finds a way to win and opens up with a 2-game winning streak. And you start looking at this and say, well, hey, maybe. They were going to host Wake Forest, and some people thought they had a chance with Wake. They didn't. Wake gets them 45-25. So you drop to 2-1, but you bounce back and get Northern Illinois the next week. So now you have navigated through your non-conference schedule, and you're 3-1. And people are like, man, if they can just find 3 wins, they can get bowl eligible. And people like myself said, it's not going to happen. It didn't happen, but it almost did. It's pretty crazy. And to give Clark Lee and the staff some real credit last year for piecing this thing together. Against Alabama, it was in Tuscaloosa. Come on, 55-3. Sadly, the reunion breast cancer awareness Vanderbilt employee appreciation game, the rivalry game with Ole Miss, went the way of the Vandy of the West. As Ole Miss wins 52-28. Would like for that game to have been a lot more competitive, but it wasn't. And then you lose to Georgia 55-0. So 3 consecutive weeks here, after going 3-1, they give up 50-plus points. And then they go to Missouri, a game they probably should have won, but they didn't. They lose it 17-14. Then they lose to South Carolina, 38-27. Competitive game, but it's like, okay, well, this is the Vandy we know and love, right? They've lost 5 games in a row. And then they go to Lexington, Kentucky. And things got crazy. They go to Lexington, Kentucky, and they win 24-21. And you say, well, Steve, you're right, though. Kentucky's just kind of a middle-of-the-road team, even though they're a media darling for no reason whatsoever. So maybe, Vandy was better than we thought, and Kentucky was worse than we thought. Okay, things happen. The next week, Mike Wright and Vandy beats Florida 31-24. Yeah, you didn't see that coming, did you? I didn't. And they win that ball game. Now all of a sudden you start thinking, well, wait a minute now. Man, if they have a chance here, it's senior day at home with a chance to play for a bowl bid and to go 6-6. I mean, 5-7 is already a successful year by Vandy standards, especially considering that that's a stretch there where they couldn't score points, and they couldn't stop anybody. So Tennessee, you're thinking, man, Tennessee may have a bit of a hangover, of course. Tennessee drops a game they shouldn't. And now Tennessee not going to be in the playoff. Maybe Vandy gets them flat. And Tennessee beat them 56-0. So they end the year with a 5-7 record. And again, you look back at that Missouri game. I mean, that's the difference in going to a bowl game or not. I mean, we're talking one play that kept Vanderbilt out of the bowl picture last year. So what's reasonable for Vanderbilt? I think one of the things you got to look at, number one, we have to agree they're getting better. Now, the talent differential between them and the rest of the league is still very extensive. But you look to be able to beat Florida, who was traditionally one of the top recruited teams in the conference, even though Dan Mullen, of course, took a flyer a couple classes. But nobody would say, hey, Vanderbilt's a more talented team than Florida. I don't know that you could say Vanderbilt's a more talented team than Kentucky. But they found a way to get those wins. And so that's the thing I'm sure Vanderbilt people are thinking, you know what? If we could just get a little talent, maybe we can start recruiting on the level we did under James Franklin, we can get back into bowl games. I mean, it was a time, people forget, I guess maybe it was when James got there. I don't remember there was a time that Vanderbilt went from like 1982 for like decades without winning a bowl game. And so they want to get back to that. I mean, obviously, you've been there. It's a very, 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 very benign atmosphere there. But Clark Lee is one of their own, so he understands, the Vanderbilt experience and understands how to sell Vanderbilt. And I think the main thing with Vandy and Barton and those guys, you just got to get your evaluations right. You've got to get your evaluations right. Of course, leading rusher Ray Davis has left and will be within the conference too. But Mike Wright is gone. Now A.J. Swan, it's his job full-time, we'll see. And they've got some guys at receiver. Of course, Will Shepard's a dude. We'll see how things go. But defensively, and you would think with Clark Lee being a defensive-minded coach, they'll figure some things out defensively. But we'll see. I just don't think this is a team that's capable of taking the next step this year. I just don't know if they have the talent. And I think losing Mike Wright's big. I really do. I think it's one of those things you look at. When things broke down and they needed somebody to make a play, Mike Wright made it for him. And now Mike, of course, is at Mississippi State. So we'll see how things progress in that respect. But, A.J. Swan should be a good guy for them. And, of course, they were trying to invest in their future. Big-time arm, for sure. And they have some guys that can stretch the field. Can they protect? We'll see. I think the reality of this thing is Vanderbilt has got to play better defense to avoid getting into these, track meets because they're not going to be able to keep up. But, Cedric Alexander is a guy obviously they're going to expect a lot from. Newcomer at running back there. But they're going to have to do a better job of running the football with some sense of purpose, and I think it's going to be made more difficult without Mike Wright. And that's one of the things, too, like one of the stats that I saw in the research is they talk a lot about, their pass protection, not allowing a lot of sacks. Well, a lot of that's got to do with Mike Wright, right? And when you've got one of the more mobile quarterbacks in the country, he should be able to get you out of that. But, they were very disciplined on the offensive line last year and returned some pieces. So we'll see how things go. But defensively, secondary was absolutely atrocious last year. Absolutely atrocious. And we'll see. We'll see how these things go. But I just don't know if they're going to have the talent and the depth. That's really the issue if you're Vanderbilt, is it becomes a war and a season of attrition. And you just don't have the bodies, of course, to kind of eat up the casualties. And I hate to say it that way, but you understand what I mean. There was some guys over the course of the season get beat up, and they need a guy that can step in. The gap between the first and second team at Vanderbilt might be the greatest of any in the conference. You're already struggling to get talent, and it's even more difficult when you can't, offer early playing time. But, we'll see. I think this is a group, it's going to be much like last year. If they can keep games manageable, if you can keep games in the 20s, you got a chance. You have a chance. So we'll see. And I've said that like 10 times now. We'll see. Of course we're going to see, Steve. But looking at this year's schedule for them, for them it's always so important to win all your non-conference games. It's so important for Vanderbilt. And it is for Mississippi State and Arkansas and Ole Miss too. We need to be able to pocket those 4 wins, but it probably means more at Vanderbilt than anywhere just because of the lack of overall talent. So they're going to open up at home against Hawaii, and the kids in Hawaii are probably excited to go to Nashville. I would be. And so you got to feel like, again, I'm not going to make that mistake this year. I'm going to pick Vandy at home. And then they get Alabama A&M. So you're 2-0 out of the chute. You got to go to Vanderbilt. That's probably a loss. Then you go to UNLV. I don't know. But I think, if I had to call it today, I think they're probably in trouble there going to Vegas. Yeah, we'll call it a loss on the road. But 2-2, best case scenario, you're 3-1 coming out of the 4 non-conference games. And the thing about that too, by scheduling the way they do, you never get that non-conference week later in the season when you need to rest some guys. So I think scheduling wise is probably not a great thing. I think you kind of shoot you wide the first 4 weeks of the season, and you're just hoping to pick up 2 along the way. They will host Kentucky. I don't think it's going to be a great Kentucky team. I've said it every year. But that's a game to watch for sure. You get Missouri and Nashville too. So now all of a sudden you start thinking here, can you get a split? Yeah, maybe. But, you probably need to win them both. And I don't think they will. I'm eager to see what Missouri looks like this year. They're not going to challenge for the East, but I think they're a team that could wreck somebody's season. Then you got to go to Florida, and then you host Georgia. I got both of those as losses. I just don't think Vandy can go into the swamp to win. They go to Ole Miss, and when these two teams get together, you just throw the record books out. One of the better rivalries in the history of college football between Vandy and Ole Miss. And really, it's a battle of trophy cases, right? I mean, let's just be honest about that. I mean, it's like, you got one team with the big ego and the meager trophy case, and then you've got the team that just fills the team because they have to, and they have the meager trophy case. And so in many respects, a lot of similarities between Vanderbilt and Ole Miss. But that game's in Oxford, and it looks like it's going to be, the ending of an era, this Ole Miss-Vanderbilt rivalry. I mean, it's not on the level of Texas and Texas A&M. It's not at that level. But, it's really sad in many respects. It's bad for the game of college football. And the truth of the matter is, Ole Miss got the biggest bone ever when we split divisions back in '92, if memory serves me correct. And their permanent opponent was Vanderbilt. It's a joke. And then they still couldn't take advantage of it some years. All right, then you get Auburn and Nashville. You're at South Carolina, and you're at Tennessee. This is a brutal schedule, guys. I mean, and not just because it's Vanderbilt, but because of the fact that you're going to need, basically, in order for Vandy to get to a bowl game this year, in my estimation, I think they got to go undefeated in a non-conference and then knock off Kentucky and Missouri. I don't see them winning in the swamp. They're not going to beat Georgia. I don't think they're going to win at Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss's running game is just going to be too much for them. Auburn and Nashville, maybe, depending on the health of that team. If Robbie Ashford ends up being as good as they expect, Auburn could surprise a little bit. And then at South Carolina and at Tennessee. So there's not a game in the Southeastern Conference I think you look at and say, hey, I would favor Vandy unless it's Vandy, Missouri. So I think in the end this is probably like a 3-9, 4-8 type year. And you hate it for Clark Lee. I mean, obviously he's a guy that loves Vanderbilt and is there doing the best he can. And they're going to work hard for sure. There's just not a break in the schedule this year. And again, I think maybe scheduling all 4 non-conference games the first 4 of the year, probably not the way to go about it. And again, opinions vary on that. You can say, you know what, Steve, we're trying to build confidence, right? And before we get into conference play, and all of a sudden you pick up 3 or 4 wins. Well, I agree with that. The Power 5 mandate suggests they have to go out and get Wake Forest, and Wake smacked them around pretty good last year. So I expect that this year. And then it's this UNLV thing. I mean, it's like, let's be honest about this. Is there an FBS team right now that you would favor Vandy going to their place and winning? I mean, and again, I say that with all due respect. But there's not a team, especially you got to go across the country. And as hey, we're going to go to Vegas, it'll be great. I think it's a distraction. I really do. So I think Vanderbilt's looking for a tough year. I don't think Clark Lee is in any danger by any stretch of the imagination. But, just like last year, we were expecting them to be terrible last year, and they nearly made a bowl game. Again, one play away from making a bowl game. And they surprised us by beating Kentucky and Florida. And how much fun was that? And then, of course, the guy that was kind of the linchpin in the whole thing is now at Mississippi State. It's a bit of a package quarterback for us. And again, I've said it more than once. if Mike Wright has to start a game for Mississippi State, depending on who the opponent is, I expect to win the game. I really do. Mike Wright is capable of running this scheme. Accuracy-wise, he's not on the same level as Will. But the flip side of it is Mike's the better runner than Will. And everybody sees it, but I think they'll complement each other really well. Eager to see how Kevin Barbay utilizes Mike Wright, as many of you are as well. So that's our preview of Vanderbilt. Now, next week we'll be back and we'll be on schedule. I'm not traveling. I think I'm traveling again until the week of the South Carolina game. But so we'll have the wife back home next week and in the next couple weeks. But so we'll have a regular schedule. At least that's a plan anyway. And things come up, I'll change it. And I thought this week's schedule was going to change. Ended up being on schedule after all. But so we're going to finish up here and head back to Starkville. And next week, we'll be kind of getting things together for this mock week. And, we'll take some time to preview our non-conference opponents. That'll get you through Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then next week, the following week, we'll be previewing Southeastern. It's August the 18th. We're going to play football September the 2nd. So when we get through next week, breaking down, what you're going to get from Southeastern will come on game week. But everything else, Western Michigan, Arizona, that's all going to happen next week. And again, a lot less availability as far as viewing practice. So we won't have our depth chart and won't have scrimmage snapshots for you. But we will have the opportunity to interview coaches and players again. So we'll have full coverage for you over at Gene's page. And we make most of our team coverage free unless it's like a one-on-one interview or an exclusive interview, like when I visited with Justin Parker a couple days ago about the pitching lab. Well, that's going to be for our VIP subscribers only. But most of our team coverage we do make free, so you don't have to be a member of Gene's page to view that. And the reality of it is we want you to be. But, there's only so much room in the paper. Even though they do some things online, we're going to have more stories, more content than anybody else. And go by and be sure and check that out. Reminder, too, Mississippi State baseball practice began earlier this week. We will be covering the scrimmages. And we'll get as much as we can. But I think, again, there's a lot of baseball fatigue right now. So we're not going to be, it's not going to be a 3-story day. Right? There have been times in our past where we'd have we'd have all these velos, we'd have the game recap, we'd have all these statistics, and we're not going to have that. And it's not that we don't care. It's just that we're going to skew most of our coverage more towards football right now because there's a lot of expectations about football. And the truth of the matter is, as much as I enjoy reporting on baseball, I just think it's kind of a niche sport this time of year. I think there are a lot of people like, you know what, Steve, listen, I'm going to worry about baseball in February, so I'm not going to read a lot of that stuff. And so there's no need for us to commit 3 or 4 stories a week to baseball right now. And again, that's not being critical of anybody. I mean, it's just, hey, the exuberance around football right now is palpable. I think we all see that. I think a lot of people are really excited about football, and they're just ready to get onto that because they think this could be a special year. My thoughts about that. I think that we're going to be as good or better than we were last year. And I'm eager to see what Kevin Barbay does. I'm really interested in what's, talking to some people when all this stuff happened, when we decided to retool the offense. The thing that people got back to me is said, you know what, Zach wants to run the football more. We ran the football some out of the air raid, and we've discussed those numbers before on the show. 5-1, when we run the football, I think 24 times or more last year. And it gives a break for your defense, allows the defense to play fresher. I mean, how many games last year that our defense wore down in the fourth quarter? And a lot of that's because we couldn't sustain anything offensively. I mean, they go over there and get on the sidelines and get their helmet off and grab them a cup of Gatorade. Next thing you know, they're right back out there. And so in order to keep those guys fresh, in some respects kind of shorten the game, having a ball control offense that eats up clock the way that Barbay's appears to is significant. And I remind you, too, a show we did here a few weeks back, year 1 at Appalachian State. They got better at every offensive category, every single one. Third downs, rushing, passing, completion percentage, everything got better. And so a lot of people are like, well, Steve, it's the first year new offense. That's true. It's true. But at the same time, too, this is a guy that's proven to show up somewhere and improve the situation that he inherits. And I think it's a good match. And talking to Barbay and to Matt Brock and to Zach Arnett, Zach is going to kind of have the vision for our program, but he's not going to be sneaking in there to the offensive meetings and telling Barbay, hey, let's do this, let's do that. He's given those guys the autonomy to be the coaches they want to be, which is one of the reasons they came here in the first place. The autonomy to do things their way. And I still believe Matt Brock is going to be a head coach for somebody at some point. And I think that what we're going to see probably over the course of the next couple of seasons is Matt Brock be a guy that kind of elevates his status as a potential coaching candidate. And I think he'll have both Mike Leach and Zach Arnett to thank for that. But if you saw what happened last year in that ReliQuest Bowl with Matt Brock calling the plays, we had a season high in sacks. And while Arnett was the guy signaling it all in, he gave Brock the keys to the car. And we had one of our best defensive performances of the year. So there'll be a lot of that this year. Will there be some growing pains? Absolutely. There absolutely will be. But again, I err on the side of caution here. I think if we weren't talking about our own team, let's say for an example, let's say we were talking about, I don't know, Florida. You say, you know what, hey, Florida has the most experienced roster in the Southeastern Conference. You'd say, well, you know what, probably a pretty good year for them. You say, hey, they're going to have 8 home games. Well, maybe a great year for them. You say, you know what? And all 4 of their road games of the SEC are toss-up games at worst. You say, you know what? Florida might be in the playoff, right? Now, we don't have those same type of expectations. But what happens is familiarity breeds contempt, right? So it's like we're so scared to believe at times. It's like, well, I know this, I know that guy, whatever. But if you look at it on paper and say, you know what? If you had like the blind resume deal, you'd say this team here is going to be really good. But because sometimes we're so afraid to get hurt, right? And we don't want our friends talking trash. You don't want your friends calling you Rose Bowl, right? That's part of the deal. Sports is supposed to be fun. It's okay to get excited about sports. It's not our life. I mean, we're going to continue to be able to pay the mortgage, right? Yeah. These coaches are coaching for their lives and their families and their ability to pay their own bills. And so the reality of that is they're more invested in this than we are. And I'm glad they don't share the sentiment of many of our fans and pundits around the country. I get the sense this staff is really confident. Still some things you got to figure out. And you got 2 more weeks to do it. And you kind of have, even though the game counts in the standings, that FCS game is a game that, we should win handily. But the reality of it is it's the first step up the mountain, and then we'll see. And I think there's going to be some big moments this year that we're going to remember for a long time. If you hadn't done so, go to whenthebottomfalls.com, and you can pre-order the brand new book, When the Bottom Falls. Of course, it's basically my memoirs, basically about my life and how I ended up and became a drug addict, how I overcame that, and how I live life clean and sober today. You can read that, and if you're a person that's in recovery, I would encourage you to do that. If you know somebody in recovery or perhaps somebody in active addiction, I would encourage you to buy that book. If you know somebody that perhaps has a loved one, that they're just kind of having to navigate through this and don't have a good understanding of what's happening, I'd encourage you to buy them that book. Buy one for yourself too. Matter of fact, buy 4 or 5 of them and pass them out as gifts. In addition to that, of course, all my sports books can be found there. That's Alpha Dogs, Stark Villains, Flim Flam, and Dogpile, plenty of Dogpile and Flim Flam. Dwindling quantities of villains. Of course, we were able to get a couple cases of Stark Villains here recently after we had exhausted its supply in the warehouse. We had a bookstore that actually had some, and we're able to get those books back. And so they're now available for purchase online. And you can get them signed or personalized however you like. In addition to that, if you're looking for Stark Villains gear, and you should be, you can find it at starkvillains.com. Always fires me up when I see people wearing those Stark Villain shirts. Pretty amazing stuff. And as always, if you are not a member of Gene's Page, we encourage you to be one. The Mississippi State affiliate for 247 Sports. It's an exciting time for us, and got some big announcements coming up here in the weeks to come that in many respects are going to make us an even better media entity. And so I share that with you because I just want you to be aware we're not always just kind of floating along, going with the flow. we're always looking for a chance to get better. All right, that's going to do it for today. A little bit shorter show today, but you had a longer show on Wednesday. And we'll wrap up our operations here in Knoxville and talk to you back on Monday. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.